Living in rural Canada is getting deadlier. Residents of a northern Alberta town describe themselves as being in a war, but the Liberals aren't making it any easier for us to save our own lives. Conklin, Alberta is an oil patch town on the way to Fort McMurray, but it's also probably the biggest small town of 200 people in the entire country. If you're from Alberta, like I am, we all know someone who either lives in Conklin, works in Conklin, or relies on Conklin for work in some way. And now the residents there are describing the lawless conditions that they have to try to live and work in every single day. Full credit where it's due, I'm relying heavily on a really good CBC article for this next little bit. It reads, Terry Mills' truck sped into the yard at 3:45 a.m. on November 8th, 2018, confronting the thieves who had smashed their vehicles through the chained gate. They were there to steal gas again. Mills nudged one of the cars with his hood and then ducked when he noticed the rifle poking through a window aimed at his head. The robbers sped off, but Mills and a security guard were soon speeding after a black car on the snowy highway. Now, this could easily be a scene from a movie, but the incident unfolded in the compound of Renegade Gas and Oilfield Services in Conklin, a hamlet of about 200 in Alberta's oil patch, about 350 kilometers northeast of Edmonton. Now, this could also be the scene in just about any small town community on the prairies these days, because the crime rate is 38% higher in rural Alberta than it is in urban areas, according to a report released by Statistics Canada. The police reported crime rate in rural parts of Alberta was 10,964 per 100,000 people in 2017. In urban areas, the rate was 7,920 per 100,000 people. Rural prairie towns are under attack by criminals who are taking advantage of two things, resulting in a perfect storm of victimization for rural Canadians. This storm is perfectly demonstrated in the drastic drop in police clearance rates for crimes in places like Conklin. They've gone from 80% to police clearing around 40% of the property crimes in just about a year. Criminals know that for rural Canada, when seconds count, police are minutes away, but in places like Conklin, it's even worse, with the closest police detachment being 140 kilometers away. That's an hour and a half away. For myself, it's about half an hour at least. And I joke about me being out here in the boonies, and I am, but there are a lot of communities that are far worse off than where I live. So that's the first problem. Distance. The second problem is evidenced in a paragraph in the CBC article I read to you from earlier. It reads, "That's when he started popping shots," Mills recalled. "We were on the phone with the RCMP from Lac La Biche, and I told them they're heading their way. They should intercept him. And then I said the guy was shooting at us. The officer said, if you shoot at him, I'm going to charge you with manslaughter. I said, I'm not shooting at him. He's shooting at us." Canadians can't shoot back. And that's not the cops' fault. They're simply enforcing the laws they have in front of them. The problem here is the laws in front of our cops. I know a lot of good, decent cops don't want to arrest their friends and neighbors for doing a job the cops are too short-staffed and too far away to do. If we try to defend our lives, our property, and our communities when there are no police available for hours, us Canadians, we'll go to jail. That's the law. If we were Americans, we'd be given a medal and a parade for selflessly taking on the protection of our communities ourselves. In Canada, if you stop a robber using your gun, you can get more jail time than the criminal. And if you somehow, God willing, manage to get the charges against you dropped, well, then the process becomes the punishment for you. Gerald Stanley is a great example of that. The Saskatchewan farmer had his property invaded by violent, drunken youths who punched his wife and tried to steal his truck in broad daylight. One of the trespassers was shot after Stanley's firearm accidentally discharged, and Stanley was charged, ultimately acquitted, But that didn't stop his life from being absolutely ruined. Financially, he's been destroyed, and his reputation has been marred as the mainstream media implied that Stanley was some sort of racist against First Nations as opposed to a man just trying to defend his family against criminal invaders that he refused to assume were benevolent. And what are the Liberals doing to solve this surging problem of criminality plaguing rural Canada, specifically rural Western Canada, rural Alberta? Well, the Liberals just passed Bill C-71 to address gun crime. But the Liberals' new overreaching gun control law only makes it harder for law-abiding people to use their lawfully acquired firearms by adding extra layers of scrutiny to already scrutinized people and extra paperwork and phone calls before someone like me can take my handgun to the range. C-71 will do nothing to even inconvenience the criminals who shot at Terry Mills as he was on the line with the police that night. But it might make people like Terry Mills' life a little harder. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. At The Rebel, we tell the other side of the story the mainstream media just refuses to tell. Now, one of the best ways to help us out here at The Rebel is to like, share, and subscribe our content to help us spread our message.